Okay. So if you guys notice, I'm directing everyone to LinkedIn right now because I said I'm going to make this interactive. So you guys on LinkedIn, you can even follow on your phone if you wish. Illinois Tech Career Services. If you notice, there's a group and there's a person. You click the group, obviously. And if you're not part of it, it will ask you if you wanted to join. If you're part of it, just go directly and it says view posts. So this is what you will see. This is the group that now has 1,565 members. The intent of this is to grow it much, much more, because when we have a community of students, of alumni, of friendly people, that kind of like takes care of the networking aspect, if you will, right? So if you notice from the content, I think I have it in duplicate mode. Ah, there you go. From the content, any comment, you will find the index. All right, we made that, we did that on purpose so that students can say you can't find the index. And when you click of one of the instances, I'm clicking on one right now, this document opens up. And this is what's available to you guys 24/7 that covers topics like today. We're talking about resumes. So you do a control F for people who are non-Apple users. I think it's, what is it for Apple? Function? Pardon? Command F, right? Resume. And the topics are delineated by hashtags. So you see hashtag resume, hashtag referrals, et cetera, et cetera. So let me catch your attention to, you see how you have 7 workshops out here, and then you have case studies. We'll cover this right now with some of them, but I'm going to pick a resume of a freshman. It definitely slowed this down big time. All right. So what do you guys get out of the first 2 check marks? The first one says job search is an art. Take advice with a grain of salt. And the second one says it's your resume, your LinkedIn, your cover letter. It's your call. So I want to hear from you guys. What do you get out of those 2 bullets?
That there's no like one size fits all solution, and like you can take the advice given to you, but you don't have to follow it exactly because it's not going to be like.
You don't have to follow it exactly. Right. Very good. The reason we say that is job search. There's so much advice that's out there. At the end of the day, you're the person who's putting themselves in front of the employers. So everything that you're putting down on paper, the way you speak, etc., has to align with you so that it's the same person that they're seeing all the way from the resume process, all the way to salary negotiation and eventual hiring. That's why you need to apply what works for you. Also, when you said not one size fits all, sometimes it applies to your friend, but for some reason it's not working for you. If something's working for you, do more of it. If something's not, stop it. Right? And so that's why we said any advice that's given you, including mine, always take it with a grain of salt. Okay? So what about the third bullet? Templates are guides. To your point earlier that there are certain templates for various jobs, but you didn't see any template that has to do for students necessarily. It's really more about the information that we put in that quote unquote tailors. So it's not necessarily finding the student template. Templates are templates are templates. Okay. To tailor it to what she wants because she is a student, it's what we're going to talk about. And we'll dive into that some more as we get into it. So templates, normally what you see, you have a summary or an objective, and then you have skills, and then you have work experience, and then what follows? Towards the end. your name, header at the top, usually towards the end. What's the information that we put in?
Contact information.
Contact information is usually on top. Yes. Usually, what else do we have? Extracurricular, actually. We'll talk about your leadership or your hobbies, yada, 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 or references, right? So when you see templates, they give you a suggestion. These are just suggestions. You don't have to follow it. Because everybody is different, you want to switch stuff around based on what it is that you're highlighting for yourself. Make sense? Okay. The next bullet, always think like a hiring manager and imagine yourself as the hiring manager. This is what I said earlier that most job seekers miss. They don't pay attention to what they said in the job description. And I get it. Students, sometimes it's like the last thing that they do. So they're in a frenzy to find a job. So guess what the number one strategy is? They have some sort of generic resume that covers everything that they think that any possible hiring manager could want. And that's what they put in the resume. It's not relevant at all. They make it quite general. And this is the approach that we like to call the spray and pray, right? Because you're pretty much spraying your resume out there, right? Creating a generic version and then blast it out to the world. Not an efficient way. You can still find a job, but not very efficient. All right? So that's the spray and pray technique. So I want to hear from you guys. What do you think of think like a hiring manager? From the versions of resumes that you guys have done so far, what do you think of those two bullets? Yes.
I have made a template for myself in my publisher, and I will go in and change it for whatever I'm applying to, so it applies a little more directly to that. And I have a zillion different versions now of, oh, this is what I was using when I applied to that thing, and this is what I used to apply to that thing.
Okay. Did you notice how my question was very specific to the job description? And did we hear any of that addressed in the answer? You see our gravitation towards not necessarily focusing on what the reader, to be efficient, the purpose of a resume is so that you get a call for an interview. If you pretty much just put your resume together in a vacuum without any regard to the reader, are you effective or not? Not very effective, right? So always be thinking about the hiring manager. And where did I say we need to be focusing on? What's the wish list of the hiring manager? The job description. Very good. So here's another fact in today's job search world. Hiring managers, do they have a lot of time or little time? Very obvious, right? Very little time. So here's the other thing that we have. In the last check mark, it says that to make the busy hiring manager's job easier, it's best to structure a resume how? To give the manager what? Easy, fast, access. Did we say complete information? We didn't say easy, fast access to complete information. We said easy, fast access to relevant information. So remember what we were saying earlier about putting information together about everything that we have? The confusing part about the resume is it's because about us, we tend to just dump everything about us, but we forget that it's going to be read by somebody who, number one, is already busy. They already told you what they wanted. Your job as the job seeker is to focus on that, take a look at what they say, and take some effort to, quote unquote, match it to the best of your experience. Obviously, you can't lie either, right? To match it to the best of your experience so that when they look at your resume, they're like, oh, perfect match, call them in. Questions?
So if there's something that you were like unsure about including, like it's kind of like on the edge if it's like relevant or not, would you say it's better to stray on the side of like being cautious and like including it just in case it could be relevant, or keeping it up to keep it concise?
Is it mentioned in the job description?
Okay, so if is mentioned in the job description, then you'd want to keep it.
Remember, they're busy, right?
Mhm.
So to your point of like, oh, I should put in there because it might apply. Well, somebody's busy to begin with. Do you think that's really going to make a difference?
Mhm.
So focus on what they said they wanted, target that so that you're more effective. Good question. So an easy rule for you when you're putting the information in your resume is it relevant? If your answer is no, it's just good to have, go on. Very good question. Other questions?
I had a question.
Yes, sir.
If you have had a job in the past that's not relevant to the job you're applying to at all, should you still include that in your work experience?
Perfect segue. It's like I paid you for the next thing that I'm going to bring on board. Thank you for that question. So the resume that you're seeing is a freshman whose jobs happen to have been volunteer work in their community fellowship. And if you notice, well, actually, this wasn't that. So to your point, you do not want to include bullets. Let's just say I work at Starbucks. I'm going to put Starbucks, the name of the company, when I worked, but I'm not going to put any bullets to describe it because it's not really relevant to them. The relevance of putting Starbucks is you want the hiring manager to know that you are employable. You have been working out there. Answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for the question. So this is the original of the freshman who came to us. And if you notice, he followed the template very, very nicely, right? The contact information on top, education, skills, volunteer work, honors, projects. So I'm just curious, what are you guys' comments based on what you're seeing so far? Does it look like yours? Or based on the information that I just shared about what resume should be like? Comments from you guys? No, either I'm very good because I made my point very well, or I'm not getting through to you guys at all.
It's a different organization than I've used, but
I'd like to hear the but part.
well, I don't know. It's I'm trying to decide what I think.
Yeah, this was the version that they brought to career services with. So they followed instructions, which is usually what students do. We're taught to follow instructions. Yes, sir.
Do you need 3 sections of volunteer work? Multiple bullet points? I mean,
Do you need 3 sections?
maybe it depends.
Yeah. So good catch. He's noticing that there are 3 things that they put under volunteer work. So obviously Benjamin was just thinking about dumping information about himself. And that's why this is the original version of the resume. So good catch. Other comments, reactions?
What's the job that? Like,
General resume right now. He's a freshman, so obviously maybe internship. Okay. So one of the things about internship is they're not as specific as forever jobs. And usually when you take a look at job descriptions for internships, it's quite general because some could be very specific, but most internships are general because they're trying to give you a taste of the workload. So again, it goes back to whatever the job description says. But I love it how he's saying, I guess I'm starting to get to you guys, right? I said the clue is really the job description. And I love how he went directly into that. And he said, what is he applying for? So very good question. All right. So under this resume, I'm going to close this window because otherwise we're going to have too many windows open. I'm going to go to case study, the better version. So remember, the student is a freshman. And remember all those check marks that I went over before we started this? See if we applied them. By the way, in the back of your minds, does anybody have a resume that they're probably brave enough that they want to be case study for today? In front of your peers? I have all sorts of case studies and practice, but I want to make this about you. So if you want the help with somebody like me in person, we can do that too. So I'm just putting a bug in your ear right now, okay? So this is the quote unquote better version. What do you notice Benjamin started with? A summary, okay? what about the summary? Is just having a summary important, or is it, what is Benjamin saying exactly in a summary that might be important to a hiring manager? Yes.
Like, he's outlining specific skills that he's giving examples of like experience that he's not just like giving a general overview of himself. He's giving like specific examples of what skills he's learned and like how he's applied them.
You said specific examples as skills, but what about the skills? I like how you said he's not just saying that he did it. What specifically about the skills is being called out in the summary? Accomplishments. Accomplishments. Very, very important. Okay. Here's the other thing that I noticed in working with resumes. Usually we like to dump information about ourselves and we just give descriptions of what we did for the task. You probably heard this before where they say, okay, but what's the impact? What's the impact? Well, this is what Benjamin did in a summary. He called out the results. He didn't just say, I programmed this, I programmed that. He's kind of like saying that I developed and programmed this, that archived, he identified 2,000 plus URLs, processed 300 plus files. He didn't just say I programmed, period. I'm going to give you a dramatic example and think to your resume right now and see if you can relate to this. Here's the dramatic example. You guys ready? So usually when you talk about a job, they say, I swept the floor, just describing the task. I swept the floor. And that's what shows up in the resume. So if you're a hiring manager and they said, I swept the floor, it's not really telling you a whole lot. And then they make an attempt to give an impact and they say, I swept the floor fast. That's what we usually see on the resume, right? Describing the task and then give some sort of impact. Versus, I led a team of 5 floor sweepers, implemented a process improvement that decreased the processing time from 60 minutes to 5 minutes. Who would you hire if you had your hiring manager hat on? I swept the floor fast or the latter? Are you guys getting the idea of what needs to be in the resume? Questions? I see your wheels are spinning.
So are you saying it's better to be like more specific, like with what you did? That like, I feel like being more specific makes it so you like, you're like just including like less almost.
You're including less?
Well, like there's more stuff to include, like the more specific you are. So I feel like that could lead to just having like less like total stuff that you can include.
I like how you're mentioning less. You're less of what?
There's, I feel like if you're more like general, then you can include like more like work experience or more like just like experiences in general, where if you're like very specific, then it takes longer to like explain like certain work experiences. So in total, you like wouldn't be able to include like as many of those experiences.
Remember, it's not about as many. It's about giving them the relevant information.
Mhm.
So if you're the hiring manager, would you want a complete dissertation of what it was that they did? Or do you want information specific to what their job description said that tells me that you have had results in that? Because the desired effect is this: I put together my wish list, you come in front of me and you say, You didn't just do work in this. You actually had accomplishments somewhere else in what I'm looking for. Does that make you stand out? Versus somebody who just said they did work in this. You see how we're teaching you how to stand out. It's very easy to stand out, actually, because everybody just talks about, I swept the floor fast. Seriously, with all the resumes that come in, and even I did before I did this work. I took a look at my old resumes, but since I'm an engineer, I'm in this right now. I'm dissecting this like crazy, right, to help you guys find jobs, right? And even my previous bullets wasn't really, the difference also is the busy hiring manager. That doesn't change. So if you're a busy hiring manager, you only have so much time. So if you give me what I'm looking for, then you kind of climb up on my list very fast. Good question. So here's where some of this, oh, you had a question?
So you talk about like impact and like accomplishments that you had from whatever experience you mentioned. What for me and when I've like wrote my resume, I kind of found it difficult to think like what I actually did.
Yes,
And,
that's
like,
usually the problem. And thank you for sharing that.
yeah.
See, I love it how you guys are like sharing ideas because you're not the only one. That's usually the problem of students who come to career services.
Yeah.
Was there something else?
Yeah, connected to that, is it better to share specifics if they aren't that impressive? Which is like, like if what you actually did, like if what you actually did in experience, for instance, isn't like you don't think it's actually like that meaningful, is it? You know, should you just describe it in general terms, or should you be like, oh, I did this, and just
So let me make this more real for you guys as students, okay? So for example, the professor gave you a project, right? They told you to do it this way. But when you went home, you found a better way. You applied it and worked well, shared it with the professor. The professor loved it, shared it with the class. You introduced the process improvement. That's an accomplishment. The professor told you to do it in 4 weeks. You did it in 3.5. You compressed the time frame. Do you think employers are looking for that? That's an accomplishment. The professor gave you a project, you delivered it on time, but they don't know unless you tell them that you actually work on 2 other papers and 2 other projects, all of this at the end of the term, and you still delivered this 3rd project on time. That's an accomplishment. They won't know that unless you tell them. But do you think these are skills that they're looking for in the workforce? Absolutely. Did that make that more clear for you guys? To your point of not really important? And I guess that's why you come to career services, because here's the other thing that I wanted to share with you under #resume. All these calls that I spoke about earlier are actually group resume sessions. So it's kind of this conversation where I'm having it with a group of students and I have 2 volunteers, 2 or 3 resumes. We work on certain parts of their resumes and we dive into it. It's hands-on. I'm on Zoom. They're showing us their resume. We're getting into it. We talk about the principles and then students are asking questions just like this, specifically about what they have in the resume. So FYI for you guys, you have like 8 recordings right now to take a look at. And this is why I was saying that this index of information, you guys are very busy students. When you focus on studies, you focus on studies. But something like summer right now, I'm noticing an increase of, well, this one is you guys right now with all those boxes. But I'm noticing students latching onto this information whenever they can. That's why it's available to you guys 24/7. So this part that says resume iteration, I keep on having it on double screen out here. Okay, there you go. I showed you #resume in the index. I showed you the group workshops. I showed you the 7 case studies right now. So the same information that's given to these students between the workshops that they listen to and based on the conversation that's given to them, students, kind of like Benjamin, can start modifying their old resume into a new resume. And then what we were talking about earlier, when usually the problem is, how do I find out what my results were? That's when you come talk to career services so that we can have a conversation with you as to what it is that you did. So you will notice in the workshops, the general format is the same. Okay. So it's like in your resume as you have it right now, think like a hiring manager. Which 2 or 3 bullets would you say would be most impressive based on the job description that you're looking at? So all those case studies that you're seeing out there came from an existing version of the resume. So the information that you guys have is not lost. What we're doing is really refining it so that we call out the results and accomplishments. So when you listen to those workshops, the instruction is the same. What in your current resume is the most impressive? Let's focus on that and call out the result. So between the workshops, you're going to hear me talk to various students with various resumes. And I'm going to put in a plug for my offer again to this group. If you want to work on some of that stuff today, we can do it for you guys. Otherwise, we'll talk about some more of these case studies that we have out here in relation to your questions. So were the instructions clear about what we're doing? So let me close this window. Also back to the index. If you scroll down further to our discussion that we had, at the bottom of the case studies, it says describing versus accomplishments and results. What you're seeing on screen are 3 versions of the same thing that are being said. There's version A, version B, and version C. Which one is the best? This is kind of like a check-in to see if you guys are still following with it. Which is the best, A, B, or C? Which one?
C.
C, and why?
Talks about their accomplishments with like specific like numbers.
With numbers, right? It gives the hiring manager what you really did, right? Versus I overhauled the website to generate more leads. Quite generic, right? And that's the A version is usually what students have in your resume. So now I want you to think to your resume or whatever version that you have and think how you've been wording it, right? And ask me questions right now if you have any. So let's go to the next one. Back to the index. This is an example of a student who had no internship or industry experience. All they had was work in the classroom. So after I had the conversation with the student, just like I did with you guys, work in the classroom is still work, right? What if we tailor it to make it look like it was done in a job? So these are 2 pictures. This student didn't even bother describing it. He didn't say I swept the floor fast. They just pretty much went to the syllabus and cut this and just pasted it on the resume, right? From the syllabus, and this just showed up on the resume. So after I had a conversation with the student saying, hey, this is still work that you're doing, projects, papers, whatever, that could possibly be related to the job description, right? What if we frame it like it were a job? And the picture on the left is what the student comes up with. It was just a shift in mindset. You guys getting ideas? Okay, I'm going to close this. Let's see what impacts us. Actually, I have this example in a scratch pad. So this is how it works in our brain. didn't realize it made it smaller. You guys see that okay? Actually, that wasn't what I wanted to share. Here it is. This is what happens in the iteration process. So see what the original student came with. We're kind of like getting into the weeds now, right? So one of their bullets, they said, are you guys seeing this okay? So their bullet said they worked on a team of 5 researchers for 6 weeks to develop a user interface for detecting media misrepresentation in the field of healthcare. So this wasn't the original bullet. Had a conversation with the student about calling out results. This was their first shot at it, okay? So aside from working on the team, we kind of said that you're actually collaborating with a team of people, right? You know how resumes kind of tell you to use action verbs? So just saying worked on a team versus collaborating might probably kind of even come out nicer, right? Collaborated with 5 researchers to develop user interface in 6 weeks. So the student's actually calling stuff out. Notice how we're going back to the, this is back and forth with the student, okay? So after they came up with this, I said, was there any further impact to the interface? Because they said they collaborated in 6 weeks, developed that. But what are we doing? I was trying to dig in some more. And this is what you'll notice in the workshops. What happens out there is I ask the student, this was kind of a finer point of this, but we usually start by saying, all right, do a brain dump on me. To your point of you don't necessarily know how to find out the information. Just tell me what you did in the job. I'm going to be listening from what did the student really accomplish. So that's what happens in those group workshops. Aside from Bernie, just listening for accomplishments, it's everybody as an audience. They're kind of practicing what I'm teaching you guys right now, right? They're practicing listening to somebody else and then listening from accomplishment. So I asked the student this, any further impact on the interface? So they said, when I did the internship, our expected outcome was to provide the UI to medical health professionals. We created the UI, but it never went to the next level. So to the student, that was the end of it, right? Because they tried to accomplish, the student did all of this in 6 weeks, but it didn't really go to market, so to speak. And she said there was no impact. And then this is where you talk to somebody like myself. I'm like, well, hang on a second. You collaborated with 5 researchers in 6 weeks, developed the user interface to detect healthcare media misrepresentation, and you actually increased because of this creation that you just made. You just gave access to any disease's information 100%. This didn't exist before. You created that. Questions? I see your faces, your reactions. I love it. Go ahead.
If it never went to the next level, does that mean it wasn't published on the internet? So how did it increase access?
Well, you created the increase to access. I just need somebody to market it to. Whether it went to market or not, I just created a product that actually gives you this information. Right? Did it exist before I made this project? No. I made it for you. This is kind of what you're telling the hiring managers. You created something out of nothing, but that was truly the impact that you made. Make sense? And to his point earlier, you guys, because, oh, we're students, you don't think it was Significant, right? It's quite significant. Good reactions. I saw other reactions out there. It's really interesting to really watch your faces as you're going through it. Others? How are we doing, Professor, with time? Do you do a break normally or
Do you need a break?
no? Okay. Should I go to the next one? All right. So this was another student that came, remember what I said, where does the summary come from? What you'll be hearing in the workshops. The summary comes from where? You have an existing resume, so the workshop comes from the bullets that they currently have, right? So the question to you guys is, which of these bullets would you think would be most impressive to the hiring manager for the jobs that you're applying to? And then there's 2 or 3 that usually show up. Think to your resumes right now. Do you think those exist in yours? For the work that you've done maybe in the classroom or projects that you think was most impressive?
So on like the topic of like working in the classroom, it looked like just from the previous like example that you showed, you didn't want, well, like the including information on like the specific like classes you were taking wasn't very relevant, but more like the work that you were doing in them was what was important.
Good question, because sometimes, again, as a student, I did this myself when I just graduated, right? You don't really have anything, so you're thinking projects in the classroom and then the coursework that you did. But again, what's the purpose of a resume? Is so that you stand out, so that they call you in for an interview, right? If I have 10 students applying for the same position with the same background, everybody's listing their coursework, which is kind of normal. Would you stand out?
No. So like you're saying like, well, just from the example, it looked like when the student had like the bullet points of,
Like Benjamin's example?
yeah, the bullet points of like just the classes they had taken in the revised version, it looked like the like classes that they had taken was removed and like replaced by the work that they like did in the classroom.
So very good issue. Remember what we said earlier? It's your resume, so you determine how best to present it.
Mhm.
If you feel more comfortable that you would like those courses to be there, by all means, do so. But I just brought up a case to you. There were 10 students, all with no experience. Everybody makes what makes sense, which is to list your coursework. If the name of the game for a resume was for you to be called in and rise above the crowd, are you standing out? And the answer is obviously no. So that's why it's your call.
Okay.
Good question. I'm loving how you guys are. I can see you guys are digesting the information because of the quality of the questions that are coming up. Others? No more? By the way, if you guys connected with me on LinkedIn, if you guys are noticing all these messages, these are students asking for feedback. The reason I ask you guys to connect with me directly on LinkedIn is number one, Bernie's crazy. Because you know how many students there are? We just did a talk to 400 incoming students who are all out of the country, international students. Okay? These guys were hungry for the information. One of the beauties of being part of the LinkedIn group with the index, because they were asking questions about resume, on-campus jobs, yada, 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 of which we have a collection on the index. And we said, guess what? You have access to this 24/7 before you even get to Chicago. So you see the value of this information?
Is the job hiring process in like other countries, is it like different? Like, do they have resumes and that?
We're noticing that difference because when we have difference coming from different countries, you get to see versions of what the practices were out there. So that's why usually their opening is, how do we make this relevant to the US market? Because number one, it's kind of like a double hurdle, if you will, because number one, you gotta match what everybody else is doing. And then being on the same playing field, how do you rise up? Because that's the name of the game, right?
Mhm.
How do you rise up of the crowd so that they call you in for the interview? And is this making sense to you guys? Is it helping? Were there any brave souls who would you want? Okay,
I can send it to you.
email it to me, please. B Flores, Floresc. And I'm hoping you'll start a trend because people will feel comfortable about doing this. And we can maximize it. This is about you. Okay, so I want to make this, worth your while for being the audience in front of me. So were you able to find me? General questions about any other thing, resume, the index. There's one topic that I probably want to jump into because it sounds like, based on the questions that you guys are getting, it's really applying the information. I would really want to spend some more time maybe on talking about LinkedIn and networking, which I like to refer to as business relations. By the way, Julie, who's coming to talk to you guys on Tuesday, was asking, let's see a show of hands of how many people did the homework. Oh, okay, most of the class. You'll be happy to know that. Again, to make this more relevant for you guys, if you do it, so that part of the discussion becomes more about you. All right, thanks, Maria. Did I say your name right?
Yes.
Cool. Before I flash it on screen, any background that you want to give the class?
Good. Good to-
Okay, so this is a general starting resume.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
like, I've used this to get just general jobs in my hometown or to get
Okay.
into the program here. So this was my resume for here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So of the things that we talk about, remember how we talk about the design principles of resumes? Did any of that apply, or you happen to have thought about it when you put this together?
Like what we've talked about.
Yeah, where we said it's your call. Obviously you did. The resumes are templates. Did you follow it to the T? You were thinking like the hiring manager. Were you thinking of the audience, not necessarily the hiring manager? Did you realize that they were going to be busy going through a lot of resumes? That's why you were giving relevant information.
I didn't think that far deep into it, I guess.
Okay,
I kind of
very good.
I got help with from my sister because my sister's made a ton of resumes and stuff, and she's a lot older than me.
Mhm.
So she showed me how to make a resume.
Okay.
And so that helped.
So you had a template to start. Did you modify stuff, or you just pretty much just filled in the blanks?
Well, I modified it from my high school resume to my college resume, but it still is tons of information that might not necessarily be relevant
Okay.
depending on the job.
So you were kind of doing what we did, what
Yeah.
we talk about. It's my resume. It's about me. I'm just going to dump everything about me, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Which is fairly standard, which is what most people do. So I'm going to do this so that it becomes. I would like the class to give general impressions of Mariah's resume, please. I will slowly scroll, observe, and as we go through this, have me go through specific sections. She has a summary. She did the education, background, and then towards the bottom, she talked about her extracurricular, which was sports. Let's hear from the class. Thoughts, reactions? What happened? So quiet all of a sudden.
Scroll down.
Scroll down. Go there. She has marching band, she has high school musical, sports.
Don't you want it to be like focus more on college, relevant college information? School? Like once you actually get into high school or college, sorry.
So say that question again.
So like, I was told that like, once you start like your sophomore year of college, that none of your high school information is really relevant.
To whom?
The
You see
job-
how we're giving advice, right? But I'm training you guys based on the information that I just gave you, right? Always focus on whom. When you're writing a resume, always focus on who's going to read it. So you were given advice saying that after second year, sophomore year, your high school information is not relevant. I would challenge that and say, in high school, did you have the ability to show leadership? Did you have the ability to show versatility or whatever? So just to blanket say that anything in high school is not relevant, I would say is not necessarily accurate because they look for that stuff. So if you notice, I didn't necessarily just jump into an answer to your question. It's kind of relative. Thoughts?
That's what I was told.
Yeah,
so-
yeah. And that's why I was kind of like telling you guys earlier, right? Whatever advice that's out there, because advice abounds. At the end of the day, that's why we went through the design principles, because I want you to know these things so that you could apply it for your specific case. Good question. You kind of brought up the fact that I was trying to talk about earlier, that so much advice is out there, you take what applies to you. You were raising your hand?
Kinda.
Kinda?
Yeah. At least the first page of the resume looked pretty music focused. Like I always, like if I did not know anything else about this person,
Uh-huh.
I'd say, oh, yeah, she's interested in music positions, or I don't. I'm not quite sure what the music hiring job market is right now.
Okay.
But I also see strong. On the summary, it says strong analytical skills. I'm not sure where that shows up in the resume.
Okay.
I assume this is tied more to mathematics.
Well, no. But I like how you brought this up. This is another thing that people normally do in resumes. I did it myself. Okay, I talk about so organized, yada, yada, yada. Mariah out here says she's a focused student. Remember, you're giving this to a stranger. A stranger reads this and they say, you're a focused student? How do I know? Right? To your point, analytical and creative, how do I know? Versus Benjamin's earlier, right? They didn't just say they were proficient in this, proficient in that. They talked about they accomplished this. So when I like to call these claims, for lack of a better term. Mariah is claiming to be strong and analytical. She's claiming to be focused. Maybe she is, right? But if you were a hiring manager, would you rather go with something that's somebody's claiming or somebody that gave data to that effect? If you give me data, it's unquestionable that you're analytical or that you're highly analytical, like Benjamin's earlier. He did this, and this. Do I question that they have skill in that? They don't. Right? So I like the fact that you kind of pointed out the strong analytical. Like I said, everybody does it. I did it. But again, what's different today is that the hiring managers just flooded with information, flooded with resumes, right? If anything has changed through the years, it's increasing because of the ease at which we give resumes. So if you want to stand out, do something different. Give them evidence of this. And that's why if you notice, going back to the previous resumes, that Ben actually. See, that's why I don't like to keep too many windows open. I always start from scratch. I guess that's good for you guys. So you see me going through the motions and you understand it. So the difference, did we open up Ben's original? So notice there was none of that in the summary. So looking forward for Mariah, you'd be putting your resume together for what now? Probably internship, right? Okay. So in your mind, what do you think you'd be thinking of? Because this was obviously, you didn't have all of this. You have some of this programmer experience? Oh, no. This is not yours. So from your existing resume, did we even have anything out here? This was to get in here, correct?
Yeah.
So what could we start talking about for an internship job based on the information that has changed since you created this?
Like, are you talking about like this internship?
Well, if you're going to apply for an internship now, because obviously this isn't going to cut it for that, right? I want
Yeah.
to start moving forward in your mind at least.
So like, I would look at the job description and see what it's about. I would probably cut out some of like the music stuff, honestly, just because it's not as relevant anymore.
Excuse me, yeah. So you could put one or two lines at the bottom, maybe talk about music. There are two trains of thought with the music information. Sometimes people are like, we want to give them another aspect of you, not just with the technical information, but we want to show you as a holistic person, so to speak. So sports, music, whatever, leadership, you put it additional at the bottom. So what about from the technical standpoint now, from the time you made this resume to now? Probably no work experience since?
Not really.
Okay, so but what about classwork that you think will be important? To the point earlier that was made, that we usually list the classes, so let's jump into it. Are there any you think that applies?
Any classes?
Any classes that you think would be strong for something like an internship, or that you accomplish something that you think is substantial enough that we can be putting on a resume? Any come to mind? I realize I'm putting you on the spot, so
I mean, I'm not sure. I don't think it would be impressive to put like what math courses I've taken. Like, I don't know.
okay. Okay, from the math courses. So let's go back to what I discussed earlier about life skills, so to speak. Like, remember when I said the professor told you to do it in 4 weeks, you turned it in 3.5, or you created this paper and then you got an A grade? An A grade is an accomplishment. Were there any of those things maybe that come to mind right now? Like, for example, I can remember back to my high school when they put together, they wanted some sort of scrapbook where I actually took, it was a literature class where they wanted to create some collage or book or whatever. And I remember spending all my time going through all those magazines, finding out the right, pieces of information and then arranged it beautifully. So this was me as a high school kid, right? If, for example, I was in your shoes, I could kind of indicate it took me 2 months to do something like that. The way that I created it wasn't necessarily required by the teacher at the time, but I put it together in a certain way. So I could have said, though it wasn't required, I put this together like this, and this was the final product. And then maybe you got an A grade, or maybe it was shared in front of the class because it was so good. Getting ideas? No? Oh, there. No?
We can talk about it.
Yeah, I was already thinking about putting it in.
There were some projects in your math course, I don't know, have.
I haven't done any like projects yet, but I have to do like a research aspect like this coming year.
Huh.
But
Is it gonna be you alone or is it gonna be group work?
so it's like just something we have to put together like to graduate. Like one of the requirements is like we have to either take like an oral presentation course on like math, or like you can ask like a professor of a class you're already teaching that you're already in. If you can like write some sort of paper, or like do some research, and then
Okay.
like, that'll be like your credit for it.
So I love this. She's talking about something that's future, but because now that I know what's supposed to be in a resume, I can go do extra stuff, if you will. I can go research about it, and I could talk to the professor that you said they were talking about it, but I could go to LinkedIn and find people probably who are actually in this field doing this research right now. So research will be part of what you did. Getting out to people in the field, going the extra mile. Are you getting ideas of how you get to create it? Not necessarily with what just exists. The beauty of this information right now for you guys as students is you get to create. Question? I see how she already said that she was already in action with that. It's 11:11. Any questions? I think you guys want to stretch, right? 5 minutes? I've been talking about resume for a little bit. And then I'm gonna like shift it to like the business relations and LinkedIn very quickly. Did I answer your question, by the way? Feel free to come back at 11:16 if you want, stretch, stand, whatever. Because remember how you said about the student, with the information? How you didn't find a template, so did my answer make sense? How it's not really a bond?
Yeah.
So it's really what we put in there.
Yeah, so I'll be editing my own. I have changes to be made, but.
Let me know if you have other questions. So how we doing it? What's that for you?
I've made a lot of mistakes, children.
Yeah, I'm noticing my mistakes, like I said, and since we think in a certain way. And obviously the final results. I'm gonna cover LinkedIn and then gonna take a little bit into the business relations part, because I think that's where we will.
Yeah, I think.
I thought we were gonna get more from the resume stage.
You can also make it as a
Because I can tell from the quality of the questions. Right, so now I give them the resources, and that's why we have the index, because usually students think that after they finish the.
Your code?
If you notice how it's set up, right?
Yeah.
So I'd love to share.
I want to implement a new algorithm to generate.
Anytime, because you're helping us instead.
I don't know,
Instead
so
of
where is the get sample or generate sample here? So here, you don't.
Yeah, this is changing.
Student has to look at X.
So the point is,
You're spreading the word.
I don't know, I can't.
I find this is very helpful. When I was a student here, if I can have you like.
I know, I say the same thing. I wish I had somebody like me when I was looking for a job.
Yeah.
You know, like your first 2 years in the job, it's like you need one.
I mean, where is the gen?
How the heck can I have experience if you're not gonna hire me?
Because I can only
I
find
remember those things.
Yeah.
here.
Very good.
Appreciate the invite.
This is seen as.
I mean, you think students are.
This.
Awesome.
Like, yeah, they have. This is the first time they have so many questions.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
I assume the program used it.
I thought that was little questions, so thanks for that feedback. No, because usually when we have group, because I teach also, so I like to do it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, to get students more
So
involved.
the.
That's better. Yeah.
I suspect that's part of here, that's
Yeah.
here, I was anywhere with the student. Cause I noticed that on the LinkedIn, remember?
Yeah, because some students, they come to my office to like ask questions.
Points.
And I advise them like.
Here it only says dimension, right? But the new algorithm requires number of point dimension. So
So feel free to plug into the LinkedIn group.
it
The
is
intent of that group is not necessarily just career services, because I call it the meeting of minds. So we're getting different perspectives, professors, alumni, students. When we all come together with the same information. we get
no.
different perspectives.
points generated in
So
Yeah,
feel free to jump in. I always invite people to, for whatever reason, nobody is kind of jumping.
yeah, I think I'll also promote this.
Thank you. Or even to your department.
What is?
Hopefully we'll start this thing that we're talking about with the partnership.
No, that's not, no, that's not that.
I just want something
Yeah,
here.
that's what Jen said.
But the point is, such it's not being.
It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, it only takes into account of.
no, at least I guess every summer I will kind of like bother you.
Yes, no, we'd love to.
To come here.
Why? Also not being used.
Start for them, like to know, okay, what they, at least they have some idea, like, I just.
We want
like
to be faster, right?
Then they have an idea, okay, what they learn and put that in their test.
Directed.
They know, okay, this part, when I work on some project, then I know, okay, what I really want to say in my resume. And then sometimes forgot what we already have done. Yeah, so it's good, like, they have this before they start. then-
Yeah.
I was like,
Always better earlier. Right?
Yeah.
You can act on it when they have a chance.
It's strange because
Because we get students when they're almost ready to go, and it's like, oh, and they're in a frenzy looking for a job. Are we gonna get kicked out? Do I have to finish right?
And you also said that you went yesterday.
What's the time?
Oh, I received this from 2-1, but like most cases.
Did you need to close it up with them? Should I end at
No,
12:55? I'll take it all the way to the end.
Yeah, it's okay, just
Okay.
like, you can have enough time to finish.
Fine. Okay.
I just didn't think about your kids.
so here
Okay,
it is.
that's what every friend wants to hear.
Oh,
No, those are correct.
oh, it's correct, but it's so strange. I mean, So-
It's just a different format.
Mm.
They're correct.
oh, I'm stupid, but you can see this. So I use this
Bayesian.
yeah, Bayesian stopping criteria. And it goes to this, and this seems to be
Is
correct,
it
right? Because the solution, if you,
He works.
I
at
still
the
have
IoT
70%, because every time I simulate it, the solution keeps.
We can just.
But if it is not,
Yeah, I wanna
But-
ask him.
it is faster, right? I don't know whether it fits the
It
need.
does, it is fast.
Yeah, cause I was looking at my resume and I was like,
But I don't know.
a lot of,
find my
a
resume.
lot of things I could.
They look.
Yeah, me too.
I really don't know where does this come from. I'm gonna ask.
So who is quite familiar with
Oh, no, I mean, do we have a?
Because when I try to upload the photo.
Irene is pretty good at Instagram.
Okay, wait, what happened? So when I try to upload the photos, and then it kind of like Instagram just tries
It is,
to
the icon of
decide
10.
the photo,
I don't.
then someone will cut off from the photo.
Oh, okay.
So how should I do that? Or should I just do it one time? Can I see the photo? Oh, size of the photo? Sure, like.
Nothing is downloading correctly.
I just want to
You can't
show
make it a
some
long time.
kickoff meeting. But
Then
then.
a long time ago, but keep the group next message, try to make it.
Yeah. Do I want to? Also, do we game there instead? Sometimes it might just not. Maybe restrictions have to be a certain size. So what filter is filter? Filter. Okay, yes. Sure.
Yeah.
So how are we doing?
Terrible.
Yes, also I'm aware I'm really susceptible to getting addicted to it, so if I let myself do it, I'll first.
So what are your takeaways so far?
I need to update my resume.
Okay, well, that's the obvious part, right? She needs to update the resume. So what are you gonna update specifically based on the information that you got right now? What are you gonna focus on?
I want to like gear it more to like my college like accomplishments and like relate them to like my majors that I have.
Very good. I'm hearing kind of like she wants to relate this to where she's going to. Huge. Thank you. Next.
I was looking at my resume while we were talking about it, and I noticed like I wasn't really a lot of the things I was saying I did. I was just kind of saying what I did. I wasn't really saying.
You swept the floor.
Yeah.
Did you even say fast or you just said you swept the floor?
Sometimes I just said I swept the floor.
Yeah.
There were a couple that were like getting there,
Yeah.
to like,
That's huge, actually. Like I said, it's usually I swept the floor is what we do.
yeah. So I definitely was looking at that and thinking of ways that I can phrase my accomplishments that have
Exactly.
like data to what I'm saying I did.
You want an easy way to do that without the help of a third party? So he's saying he's going to think of how to word, because you got the distinction today of you want to call out your results, right? So he got that distinction. So let me give you additional tools as to how to do that. In a group setting, you will notice in the Zoom workshops that is accomplished by me just saying, okay, what are we focusing on? And then I'm going to say, do a brain dump. Tell me what you did. Everything, no holds barred. Okay. Don't think about the wording, yada, yada, yada. Just tell me everything. But I'm going to be listening. And the other students, as you're telling me what you did in that job, are going to be listening for what did he accomplish? What did he accomplish? You can still do this alone by yourself. To your point that you're going to start doing it. The way to do that is the equivalent of the brain dump. When I just say, tell me what you did, is you're just going to write everything down. Right. Kind of like brainstorming, right? What's the basic principle of brainstorming? Just dump everything. Don't judge, whatever, just dump everything. So after he writes everything about that particular job or that specific bullet, then you reread it a second time. And he goes back to say, what did I really accomplish? The beauty of it when you're doing it by yourself is it's your experience. I don't have to like ask you. Because usually you saw that picture earlier that we had where the student had a version and then I asked an additional question because I'm trying to draw it out of them. The nice thing about you, if you do it by yourself with that dump originally, you're the same person. You can see what you accomplished because it was your experience. And then you'd be like, in your second run through, what did I accomplish? Questions about the method? Make good? That was good? Other takeaways? No more takeaways?
Mine was kind of the same as his. I need to go through and like change from describing what I did to what I accomplished.
Very nice. Always give them the context of what your impact was. Again, think like the hiring manager. It's not just about you. So you guys seem like an advanced class, and we had till like noon for me to give you information. So let's just jump on and give you some additional information, which I think is information that will skyrocket your journey, not just for job search, but pretty much anything else outside of this. So when you go into the LinkedIn group, how did we say we find the index again? How do we find the index in the LinkedIn group? It's usually pinned on top, but when it's not pinned on top, like Julie just posted the most recent podcast, it's not pinned there right now. So how do you find it? It's just the comment to any post. So just go to any post and it should be a comment below. So once you open up the index, this is the 24/7 access to any of this information, which is delineated by hashtags. Hashtag resume, hashtag cover letter, hashtag interview, whatever question you have about job search. So going back to the LinkedIn group, I want you to take a look at this. So Jason was a second architectural engineering student who came to the office when I first started at Illinois Tech last year. And what result did Jason get that you think you would like for yourself? Nothing?
Well, he wasn't trying terribly hard, but two took great interest in him, which
I loved how you caught on to that. He wasn't really trying very hard. And then some people were interested in that. Very good. What were you gonna say?
I was just wondering if like the like pulled connecting, like, is that like strategy very dependent on what like industry you're looking to go into?
Cold connect.
It's like you don't really know them, but
Cool, yes.
you're reaching out. There's no previous like
You can walk up to them in a party.
okay.
Well, that's kind of cold connecting, right? Walking up to them in a party. In this case, though, you're walking up to them on LinkedIn.
You haven't already walked up to them and spoke to them.
Yes. I like how you made it like a party. It is. It's the LinkedIn party. So this is the conversation that we have with students. LinkedIn has almost 1 billion global professional users. If that's where everybody's playing and you guys are aspiring to be out in the field, to be one of those professionals, where should you be playing? Should be playing in the same playground, right? Jason was kind of ahead of the game when he came to the career services office. He said he already started doing his research on LinkedIn. The beauty of LinkedIn is everybody's got their laptops, their phones. This information is available to you at your fingertips. A lot of students talk about, career fairs. Professor Yuhan said that when she was a student, she went to career fairs, which is kind of like companies coming out to school so that you can have the opportunity to work for them. The beauty of something like LinkedIn that has almost 1 billion professionals, and it is an environment where you can just pretty much reach out to strangers, is guess what? I don't need to wait for them to come to me. I can go to them and I can be very selective about the companies that I want to work for, about the jobs that I want to work for. And then I have all these resources because these companies are staffed by people who I want to be like one day. What do you think you could learn from them? If they're doing the job that you want after you graduate, what do you think you could learn from them by talking to them today?
How they got that job.
How they got that job is the obvious one, right? Because you want to get into their job. Very good. What else?
Like what sort of steps they took?
What steps they took to get there, right? Do you think they were students at one point? They could bridge that gap for you guys, right? You see how we're opening up the doors? We're kind of like kicking the doors down here because of something called LinkedIn.
Like what are the requirements for the job?
What are the requirements for the job? What else? Have you guys ever heard people talk about the US is a highly referral-based market? What does that mean? It means you have to know people,
Well, it's just kind of like, yeah,
referrals, right?
Yeah.
You got to know people. How do you get to know people?
Thank you.
Number one, you reach out to them cold. Number two, so if I met you on the street and then I said, hey, I know that you're hiring manager at Amazon. I just graduated from Illinois Tech. These are my qualifications. I have this experience. Help me find a job. Is that a good approach?
You gotta like build a relationship with them.
A relationship has to be built before you jump in. However, it's like the obvious thing that's being done. So I'm going to direct you guys to, aside from hashtag resume, I'm going to go Control F, hashtag business relations. This is part of why we have the Illinois Tech group. There's almost 1,600 people out there. Normally, when you connect, let's find a stranger. So let's find somebody that we don't know. So I'm going to go to Amazon, the company. Under Amazon. What happened to companies? I go to the company. This is what I was saying earlier. You pretty much get to find the company that you want. I get to 189 people work here. So the stranger, we're already connected. I lost my train of thought. People. So you see how directed this could be? So you can pretty much categorize people. What would be the easiest thing to do if you were trying to go to a company that you have a background of relatedness with already? People who went to alumni, right? That's kind of like the easiest thing. Another way to do it is just to go to people's profiles, read about them, if they're into music or whatever. Oh, I kind of like this in high school. Right? So under hashtag business relations, one of the things that you'll find is Jason, like I said, he had a list of people that he wanted to connect with when he started. Under hashtag business relations, you will notice that you have three groups of messages out here. There's connect, cold, like 1 through whatever. And then there's connect practice. These are alum, other students, people in companies right now that you could practice what you learned in the first set, connect cold. And then when students were reaching out to companies, they found out that, you know, they were like, okay, what the hell do I say now? So that's why you have connect cold, connect practice, and then connect messaging. So from the standpoint of we saying it was kind of like a party reaching out to somebody for the first time in a professional environment called LinkedIn. What are your thoughts based on what's being shared right now with you guys? I kind of showed you the results earlier, right? Jason, he had a list of people on LinkedIn who were in jobs that he wanted, possibly hiring managers. And then he wasn't even looking. 2 people were saying, hey, you want an internship next year? Why do you think that was? There was a step that Jason did so that he was attractive to whoever he was talking to. What do you think Jason had to fix up first? His profile. Very good. So let's go to Jason's profile. How many people did some work on their LinkedIn profile? Not much, which is standard question. Standard answer rather. Jason's profile didn't look like this when we started. But notice how this is prime real estate. The banner, right? Put something thoughtful out there. Doesn't matter what it is, just change it. All right. So it looks like you did something. Put a smiling picture under your name. Notice how people usually put, student at Illinois Tech. That's good. But if you had a job title to a job that you want eventually, make sure you put it there. In your resume, when you have a summary, guess where that it's going to fit in nicely in your LinkedIn. You could put it in your about section. So here's a student who came to Illinois Tech, was a freshman when she first came. All you really need in the beginning is like what I mentioned, nice cover, picture. She still says student at Illinois Tech. All you really want to do right now is it's making you look legit when you reach out to people and then they talk to you. It doesn't have to be as nice as Jason's or as like mine. The whole intent that you want to do is that you want to make sure that they see that you're legit. And you have two advantages when you say you're a student. You want to use it. What do you think the advantage is?
Young.
You're young.
You have professors who know you?
Pardon?
You have professors who know you? I don't,
Oh, what is the advantage of being a student?
yeah.
The advantage of being a student is when you're reaching out to some stranger who's probably in a job that you want, is they see your leadership. Hey, this is a student. I was a student once. I can see myself in that student. But they're demonstrating leadership right now. They're demonstrating initiative. Do you think they're more likely to help to answer your questions or kind of like help you, nudge you along in your journey? If you ask questions about, oh, what's it like for this particular job? I see that you're working there right now. How did you get to that position? Is the picture becoming clear? I just covered the LinkedIn thing. You see under connect messaging, further down, it says the wrong way. So I want you guys to tell me why this is wrong. Maybe wrong is the wrong term. It's inefficient. Why is this inefficient? Oops. The other version was better, right? Why is this inefficient? It's inefficient. So this is a hiring manager and a student sent this to the hiring manager. Why is it inefficient? It's intuitive. I'll give you that. It's very intuitive. This is like the first gut instinct that you have to send to the hiring manager. But if something is intuitive, guess what your disadvantage is? Everybody is doing it. Just like the resume, and the whole point is to stand out. If you're messaging just like everybody else is messaging, you're not standing out. And think of yourself as a hiring manager, right? You just put a job ad out there, 500 people, 1,000 people. Nick, who works at Career Services, hiring manager, he described the experience as overwhelming. If you get messages like this, are you going to open them? Some get lucky, some get opens. But again, the name of the game is efficiency, right? So I'm going to start. Should I start talking to you guys about this, or should I just leave it up to you to discover? How's the brain level on a scale of 1 to 10, where the brain power, we've been talking about career services, on 1 to 10, where 10, you're full. What number are you guys right now?
8.
She's getting it. We're talking about job search stuff since 10 o'clock, right? Thank you for your attention, but I see that we got somewhere based on your takeaways. 7.5, getting there, right? Okay. This is kind of pretty much the same approach when students come to career service, because if you notice, I have a lot of information to share, but I'm only as effective as the information that you're taking in. So I always check in with you guys. So let me give you some more tidbits as to what the next step is with the seed that I planted with you guys called business relations. How about this? Can you guys give me an example, maybe, of how you've seen this work where somebody knew somebody in an organization or got a favor or a job or something because of connection?
My brother, who's
Yeah.
younger than me, but planning to go straight into a trade. My mom knows a mom at band who knows a guy in the industry that my brother wants to go into, and that mom got my brother a tour.
Wow. Real life example, right? Not even necessarily. So what can you learn from that?
Just like talking around, I guess.
Yeah, it's talking, because you never know, right? Number one, if you don't open up the conversation, you don't know what's behind that door.
I kind of have something similar, but not like, not really like job related,
Yeah.
because like I didn't open that door, I guess. Like one time, one of my professors brought me to like the Philharmonic Orchestra, and we
Okay.
went backstage, and like, cause she knew people and like she sang on the stage before and everything.
Wow.
And I
She
was,
said, come on with me,
yeah,
let's go
she
meet
was
some
like,
people.
let's go meet people. So I did. And I was talking to this guy backstage who apparently held like a high position in like setting up events and everything for the Philharmonic Orchestra. So we said like if I ever needed tickets, let him know. And
Oh.
like so I could reach out and get like free tickets and stuff.
Okay.
And so like I'm really into music, so like reaching out to him on LinkedIn would be cool to like ask about.
So she just demonstrated a real live effect of what we just talked about, connect code, right? She didn't know this person originally. Because of a connection, she got connected to them. So this is what I was talking about earlier with various ways as to how to connect to people on LinkedIn. In her case, it was a third party. So one of the things that you notice on LinkedIn is when you open up somebody's profile, sometimes it says mutual connections. So you could do what she did, having to go to a third party. Is that person, in her case, since it was a face-to-face, that person was required. On LinkedIn, do I need that third party to be present? I can just say, hey, I know that you're a connection of so-and-so. Would love to connect with you. And then you could mimic the events that happened, because what were you doing? You were just talking backstage, right? Right? I ask you a question, you answer, ask a question, you answer. You're going back and forth. If you notice back to that message that I was saying was not effective, there is a framework as to how to be effective in connecting on LinkedIn. And the framework is as follows. Message design principles. Just like we talked about the resume, when you message on LinkedIn, number one, is your message short? This message is kind of short, but if this is considered short, I would say make it micro short. Why do you think that is? Guess what happens when I open up my messaging inbox? Can I tell who sent me a short message? I can like just scan through this, right? And immediately see if somebody sent me a short message or a long message, right? That's one of the reasons you want a shorter message, because if it's short, they can see it. And if it's like this hiring manager who has a bunch of stuff, they'd be like, oh, that's standing out. What's that? You see, it's kind of like psychological too, right? And what was the second design principle, if you caught it? It's worded to do it. To expect a response and lay the foundation for conversation. Going back to the example backstage, that relationship wouldn't have occurred if she just stood there in front of the person. Hey, your friend or whoever teacher introduced you.
I kind of just started talking to him.
See,
I just-
there was an exchange, a back and forth, right? And that's why, without the back and forth, there was no relationship.
It was kind of very interesting. Like there was other people around, but I just like for some reason decided to talk to him.
Yes.
So it was just like,
So the same thing happened. She was kind of drawn to that person forever. And well, number one, there was the music interest. You want to mimic the same thing in the LinkedIn environment. When you look at their profile, you see interests, you see who they're connected with. Find something that kind of relates you because it gives you information to talk about, right? Because you really need the back and forth to create that relationship. And then what's the last thing? It's talking about avoid the taboo of doing what? Do not make a request immediately. Not, yeah, people just go straight to it. It's kind of like I just saw the stranger, you go straight to their throat and say, hey, help me find a job. You don't know me, but these are all my qualifications. Or can I have 15 minutes of your time? That's kind of like a usual approach. That's what everybody does.
like what are ways to like build a connection with people, like LinkedIn, like to like keep the conversation going to like what do you?
I'm going to end with that, and thank you for that. It's like I paid you again to give me the next step. So this is this is under Connect Code, right? That group. We're giving you suggestions as to how to do it. Make sure your personality fits into this, whatever you're comfortable with, right? So Akil sent this message. He goes like, hey, Bernie, I'm a junior graduate major in construction engineering management. I would be happy to get connected with you. Best regards. And then he says his name. Very formal. It's a standard way that we know how. I liked it because number one, it was short. Number two, it was straight to the point. Did he do the taboo of making a request? He kind of did. He asked me to connect, but this was a connect request message. So it was implied. But I liked it for its shortness. And I wanted to use it as an example for you guys. This is probably where you go, right? What if I showed you something else? I want to see your faces when you see this. Is it short? Is it designed to get a response?
The one on the left?
I'm just saying, hey, Eden, happy 4th.
So this is someone who,
I don't know this person. Is this going to stand out in her inbox? Yes. If you're civil and I met you on the street, I don't know, hey, happy 4th, man. What's your gut reaction? Happy 4th back, right? Did I get what I wanted? Yeah, they responded. And then I'd find something in their profile, talk about them, yada, yada, yada. If we both went to Illinois Tech, hey, I see you're a graduate, because you're creating the back and forth. What'd you think of that? You probably didn't think of that, right? So I want you guys to click to the example. Tesla. Hey, Aaron, happy Monday. How could I pass up connecting with a recruiter from Tesla? Coca-cola. Happy Tuesday, Chase. I love my Diet Coke. I'm just trying to create conversation, right? Do you think I'll stand out? Yeah, in the message box, it just stood out. You think they're more likely to answer me? Again, nothing is 100%, okay? I'm just giving you ideas as to how to do it. So let's take a look. I'll close with this. Dalton. Dalton is an author. I don't know if he came around the time that you were probably out here. He's the author of the book, The 2-Hour Job Search. I didn't know that he was invited to Illinois Tech. I just happened to see a book, and that's what I talked about when I sent him a message. This obviously worked because he responded, but my first message was that. Hey, Steve, sorry, a book in my boss's office. Just read a summary. Why is it effective? I worded it very specifically because I followed my design principles. Is it short? Yes. Is it designed to elicit a response? Why?
Specific about which.
It wasn't specific about what I talked about. And what else? Was I talking about me? Which is usually intuitive, right? I talk about me, I talk about me. Did I talk about me? I talk about his book. And now I got him curious. Which book did you read? I didn't even know he wrote more than one book. You guys getting ideas of how to stand out?
Just to,
These are very like in your face, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah,
Kind of feels like intimidating to like I don't know. I'd feel kind of hesitant to like. send
that's
a
why you
message
have,
like that.
remember, connect code and then connect practice.
Yeah.
Just practice it. Or do whatever's comfortable to you. I mean, the intent isn't to have you
Yeah.
jump out.
But it's like to get them to keep talking to you. Like it's very interesting.
with like the Coke and Tesla examples, like, did you ever end up getting responses for those?
Yeah. I did. And then part of the information is, if you don't get responses, this connect messaging part, I have various suggestions. It's just background for you guys. Before I worked for Illinois Tech, I created a program called Graduate to Hire. Okay, I was in the marketing operations space. I'm an electrical engineer, by the way, right? But I got into the marketing space. What I was doing was helping coaches and consultants on LinkedIn find clients for their $5,000 to $100,000 packages. This was pre-COVID. Everything was on LinkedIn. One day, my niece said she was looking for an internship. And I'm like, hang on a second. Why can't we teach these business strategies to students so they can find jobs faster? That's when Graduate to Hire got born. The reason I got this job as a career coach at Illinois Tech right now is BJ Engelhardt was a stranger to me also at one point, but because I was trying to syndicate my Graduate to Hire program at various universities, BJ was one of the directors that I reached out to, July of 2020. So long story short, I wasn't kidding about you don't know what's behind that door. And here I am because of a, hi BJ. I don't know if I said happy for it, but this is where it started. Other question? I think I got you primed for business relations, right? And I think we're doing pretty good with time. Yes, sir.
Just kind of like Zeke, because we go here. But like how, like during, can we just go to the career start? Do we have to like book an appointment?
Yeah, on Handshake.
Okay.
Plus, you know me. I mean, connecting with me directly on LinkedIn. Students send me questions all the time. I wish I had a Bernie, like Professor you and I were talking about earlier. When I was a student, I wish I had me. And now it's at your fingertips, man. Students are messaging me around the clock. Actually, I do it on purpose because I want to give you guys the experience of communicating with a professional who's out there. They're just people, just like me. Good question. I expect to see you soon.
Yeah, for sure.
See, Professor Yuhan, this is why we said, when we get the word out like this, because sometimes people don't see this, because obviously you're trying to get that degree, right? So thank you for the opportunity.
Are your offices open during the summer?
Yes, MTTC, and students have taken advantage of it. By the way, I'm going to put in a plug for students who saw the value of this business relations. We have a group of about 70 volunteers right now practicing business relations, inviting companies to come to our career fair, using that as a door opener. Because sometimes the problem is, what do we talk about? So we're giving you an excuse to reach out to people in the companies that you want. Hey, come to Illinois Tech, to our career fair. Hey, come to Illinois Tech for an alumni gathering. So if you're interested in being part of that group that is being mentored personally in these approaches, and I kind of like tell these students, hey, send me a message. If you're stuck, if they're not responding, come ask me. We have answers as to how to get around those. That's where you guys live. And with that, I'll give it back to you.
I guess let's then Bernie first. I just cannot find my resume, otherwise I will share that with
Oh.
you guys, and you can like practice that, I guess. Okay, do you guys have any other questions for Bernie?
I didn't, it's like,
Yes.
how do you like keep the door open between connections? Because you're so busy that like you might not always have time to like keep like talking. Do you know what I mean? Like, how do you make sure like that door doesn't close and like you can't just like respond to them out of the blue again? Like it'd be like awkward.
If
Does
the
that
door
make sense?
closes, you're absolutely right, and the door closes. I come from a sales background, so part of the stuff that I'm teaching you guys, I had a spreadsheet of all the people that I connected with in the business relations group. You could do a control F, well, just control F Google Sheets. You can start a Google Sheets of the LinkedIn connections that you had. You just put the date, what was the last action, but part of the tactics of reopening the door again
Okay.
is in that connect messaging. So part of what we here talk is to read the situation. So feel free to message me if you have something specific. Good question.
Any other questions?
Thanks for your attention, guys.
So I'm just wondering, like, can career service provide some kind of like advice for the academia, like job searching or something like that? Because if they got their PhD, then they may need to like not use resume, but like the CV stuff, something like that.
Yeah, we help with that as well, even for like medical school and stuff, because it's kind of the same principles, right? You can
Yeah.
look at yourself. That's part of what we do.
Okay, so
Career services.
also have that. Okay, that's
Yes.
good.
And then we're going to teach you business relations to network with people in the PhD community. Right?
Good.
All right,
Okay.
guys. Thank you. Thank
Yeah, well,
you.
thanks for me.
Yeah.
Kate, do you have any questions?
I'm good, but thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Okay.
All right, we're gonna, I guess, end it, right?
Yeah, you can stop share and you can stop.